Welcome once again. This is Court in Session. I'm your host, Justice Hype. This is not the court of law. This is more like the court of public observation, perspective, and most importantly, factual information, where you or I could be the judge, jury, plaintiff, or defendant. It all depends on your perspective and your observation. And in today's proceeding, we bring into the court the head of the current administration, President Joe Biden. On your left, current New York City Mayor Eric Adams, current Texas Governor Greg Abbott, New York State and City judicial system, and in general, all three branches of our government, executive, legislative, and judicial, fulfilling the public it was voted in to serve. And as we all know, we have this pressing issue of immigration crisis that has plagued the entire country, mainly our largest cities, including where I am, New York City, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and we can't forget the smaller states and smaller cities that are also burdened economically and socially by this crisis at hand. And there's so much to unpack because first, there are policies or foreign policies in place from the current and past administrations that have caused the destabilization of these countries and putting their citizens in a dire space of uplifting themselves from their homeland and crossing rigid terrain, whether it be rainforests, deserts, to breach the United States border in search of better opportunity and a better standard of life. That's all understandable and has been done for centuries now. And I would like to say this before we move on. Anyone that is anti-immigration is anti-American and very ignorant, to say the least. As this country was first built on the backs of slaves, not immigrants, slaves, African slaves first, and then other Africans, Caribbeans, Italians, Germans, French, and other settlers from other countries, other ethnicities, other races that settled and built this country into what we know it as in terms of a thriving economic institution. Of course, socially, culturally, we have a lot to pick apart and that we could attack. As we have fell short socially in many ways and culturally in ensuring the equality of all of our citizens, but nonetheless, as American history has shown and world history has shown, the United States has been the center point on the globe for people to migrate in search of better opportunity and a better standard of living. All four corners of the world. And so there will be immigration, and there are laws that mandate how immigration is handled and how it's processed, how it's managed. There are ways of filing for immigration and lawfully entering the country and receiving temporary status for work permits. All these processes are specifically detailed within laws on a federal and state level. So once again, we have to revisit 11th and 12th grade government or civics class, where we studied three branches of government and what their duties are. And first, of course, executive, its primary function is to enforce the laws mandated by the legislative branch or arm of our government, our Congress, House of Representatives, Senate. Alright, so first and foremost, our borders and the insecurities of our borders by this current administration. And of course, going back to our past administration, it was a priority of 45 in managing our borders, and of course some of it I believe was politicized and over dramatic, over publicized a bit, in terms of how immigrants or illegal immigrants were handled. And of course I don't believe, we know that there were immoralities and definite breaches of law in the way that extracting illegal immigrants was managed by Donald Trump and our past administration. Nonetheless, there are laws that mandate how we specify who is legal, who is a citizen or able to occupy this country, who is considered an illegal alien, who has a person who has domicile or his birthplace is of a country outside of our borders. There's laws that specifically specify this, and at the highest level, our executive branch, aka president, is supposed to enforce these immigration mandates. And so we have to look at some of the policies that have been put in place, and some policies that haven't been enacted in order to make sure that our borders are secure in whichever way they are going to be secured, because it's an issue of national security, obviously, for many reasons. And our president has, I will go into that a little bit later, himself as a member of the Senate has mentioned how imperative it is to make sure that our borders are secure, as we are currently dealing with a fentanyl crisis, right? We are currently dealing with an issue of missing children and trafficking. We are also dealing, and the beat just goes on. We have wars overseas that have taken up billions of dollars of aid, which is basically taxpayers' money, right? And our borders are insecure from terror, acts of terror. This has all been stated publicly and been mentioned by public officials in the legislative branch, and even by our current president, Biden. Now, as I mentioned, most of our larger cities bear most of the burden of these millions of illegal immigrants who have breached the border and have overrun our cities. And in New York City, to date, it's stated that over 150,000 immigrants have arrived in New York City, 70,000 of which occupy shelters. Now, as many know, the country has been economically unstable since the pandemic. We had a major job loss. We've had inflation. Most of the office spaces in Manhattan are vacant at this point in time. We have many people who have been displaced from homes. And these are citizens who have lawfully entered this country, who are born in this country, who are unable to access the basic amenities of healthcare, education, and housing. Yet there's been billions of dollars poured in to illegal immigrants. And why New York City specifically is a little bit different and has a much more difficult time managing this crisis is because New York has what is called a right to shelter law, which basically states that the city is required to provide shelter, temporary shelter, to homeless citizens. I'll repeat that. The Right to Shelter Act, which was established in 1981, basically requires that the city provide temporary housing for every homeless citizen. No other major city has this law. Like our neighbor, New Jersey. I believe if you were a citizen of the state of New Jersey, you can occupy a shelter for up to 2 years. The last that I was aware of, I heard of. And if not, I believe you get a year within the shelter, and then you are forced to evacuate. Whether you end up in a park, under a bridge, that's on you. You're out. Well, in New York City, this law requires that shelter be rendered unto those who are citizens. Now, the key words here, there's key words that we have to look at in every law. And in this one, it's citizen, temporary, and housing. Citizen, temporary, and housing. Okay? So, these are illegal immigrants. These are not citizens that are being moved into hotels, being moved into shelters. In cities like Chicago, I've seen where youth football or basketball programs have been uplifted and uprooted so that room can be made for illegal immigrants. Once again, these are not lawful people who have taken the lawful steps to attain citizenship, a work permit, a work visa, or legal entry into this country. These are people who have breached the border unlawfully and now receiving the amenities. Going back to why the charge of treason is mentioned here. And we'll revisit that definition in just a few. We have illegal immigrants. It's not funny, but I mean, you have to laugh at how ridiculous it is, almost, that there are people who are citizens of this country, lawful citizens of this country, who are not able to access the same amenities that illegal immigrants are able to access, under the watch of those mentioned in the beginning of our proceeding. Now, treason is defined as the crime of betraying one's country. That is the basic Webster American Dictionary definition of treason. And the United States Constitution goes further into its definition of treason and defines it as levying war against the country, aiding and providing comfort to its enemies, which is on a state and federal level punishable by death. Understand? So obviously the law takes into account how severe the act or the crime of treason is. It is punishable by death. The key words there: levying war, aid, providing aid and comfort to enemies. Okay, as we know that there are many of these illegal immigrants that are breaching our borders, have nefarious agendas. But I just saw a story of a cop being assaulted. This morning, I woke up and on the news there was a story of an NYPD officer being assaulted, and subsequently the judge releasing the immigrant back in the streets, in which he's flipping. I believe he's in front of the courthouse and he's flipping off the cameras and flipping off other cops in the vicinity. So these are people who have absolutely no regards for the authorities here. It's widespread on social media People who have worked to process these people and moving them around the country and provide housing and schooling, daycare, childcare, and other amenities for these people who have been assaulted or mistreated, disrespected. So we know for a fact that all these people are not coming here with the right intentions, with good intentions of being a upstanding, productive member of society within the country, within the United States. Yes, I'm sure. Yes, we will know if we look at statistics, right, and the law of average, that there are people who are coming across the border who are desperate, in dire need of food, clothing, and shelter that they can't attain in their country, and have decided that they're going to take the risk. Just keep in mind, looking at this from a different perspective, for you to leave your homeland, your place of birth, right, where there's a whole different language being spoken, and go through rainforests, deserts, without adequate food, water, clothing, through all different climate situations, and then risk possibly being shot breaching the border. There has to be some dire need. We have to look at that as well. And there is some humane and morality that has to be attached to handling this situation. We do understand that. But at the end of the day, the laws have to be enforced. And these people have to understand that they cannot just enter this country and be entitled to the same amenities and the same opportunities that people who lawfully enter this country receive. And I don't want this to take too long. I could get on Eric Adams for another day as far as his hypocrisy in handling this situation, and then even our comptroller. If you are so interested and would like to know, look at the New York City comptroller's website, where he's basically promoting how great immigration is for the city, and how much of a benefit it is going to be for the city at large. I'm very questionable of the agenda there, as well as Eric Adams, our mayor, who was a great proponent. Come on in, as the buses flowed in from Texas, and New York welcomes the immigrants, and now has done a complete 180 since not receiving any funding from the federal government. Going back to our executive branch and legislative branch, hasn't received any help from President Biden or assistance from President Biden, nor has our Congress stepped in to assist New York and other major cities who have faced major budget cuts in almost every facet of city government, as a repercussion of this immigration crisis. And as I close out my case here, I want to leave you. We'll probably do a part 2 to this. Definitely going to do a part 2 to this, because there's so much to unpack. But I would like to leave you with a quote from then Senator Biden 16 years ago. And he says, and I quote, "No great nation can be in a position where they can't control their borders." He continues to say, "This matters not just for immigration. It's drugs, terror, and a whole range of other things." I wonder what a whole range of other things could be. What do you think? Let me know. What do you think? Is this treason? Have our officials, our elected officials, acted in the interest of the public? Or are they acting in the interest of the public by allowing illegal immigrants to overrun our borders and receive access to the same amenities that legal immigrants are unable to access? Completely neglecting our border and the security of our border. Governor Abbott, in his protest, using federal funds to transport illegal immigrants instead of somehow turning them back, and using people, because at the end of the day, these are human beings. And children also involved, using these people as political pawns because the other side of the fence didn't necessarily do what you felt was necessary to secure the border. So I'm gonna turn this problem on you, and I'm gonna make this problem as compounded and as much as I can, as difficult as I possibly can for everybody else, since we didn't get the necessary support or action that we felt was necessary to solve this issue. The jury's still out. I find all parties guilty of acts of treason for A, not following the laws of immigration, right? Completely abandoning our immigration laws and allowing illegal immigrants, once again, to attain the same amenities that legal immigrants are unable to attain in this country. And at a time in which this country is in such peril economically and socially. Our healthcare system broken. Our education system broken. Our mental health system, our ability to manage mental health broken. Our infrastructure, roads, bridges, tunnels broken. And yet still we're aiding foreign entities, and we're also aiding, whether we want to acknowledge or not, there's the humanitarian side of helping those refugees and migrants who are in dire need of food, clothing, and shelter. Yes, there are also those with nefarious agendas, which has been acknowledged in the quote that I read by our then senator, who is now president of the United States, Joe Biden, right? Has acknowledged these threats to national security, yet has done absolutely nothing to quell or neutralize these issues. Let me know what you think. The court is now adjourned. Peace and blessings. Stay safe, family. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.